Hey guys, Bart from TST Industries here. Welcome to TST Garage. Today in the shop with me is Yamaha MT-07. What are we doing? We're going to be installing the TST Industries Elite-1 Fender Eliminator on this beast. In our lineup, we have three different variants of this Fender Eliminator. We have the low mount, high mount adjustable, and high mount standard. Each one of these kits has a base component. It's our closeout. It closes out the hole left behind by the removal of the fender. It makes the area really cosmetic. It's actually texture and color matched to the undertail plastics. The entire area is left looking very cosmetic and congruent with the body lines and the design language of this motorcycle. We ship these components with all stainless hardware, and we also have these blinding caps, these little canoe clips that go in the holes should you not be using these holes for fastening one of these brackets onto it. I'll explain a little bit more during the flow of the installation. Now that I've described the base component, let's move on to the license plate brackets. Here we have our low mount bracket. It is executed in laser cut stainless steel. Then it's powder coated black for a stealthy finish that matches the undertail of this bike. The low mount hangs in this area. The high mount mounts right about here under the taillight. This one is also executed in laser cut stainless steel powder coated black, just like I mentioned for this kit. Here we have our flagship system. It's our adjustable setup as opposed to the static standard version, which is bent and is not able to be adjusted. This system comes with a hinge point that enables you to set in the hanging angle of your license plate to your liking. This setup is manufactured out of CNC machine 6061 aluminum. It is anodized. It looks very, very techy. You have a brushed finish on the flat face of this bracket. You have TST Industries inscribed on the middle of that bracket. There are some other really nice details that we've machined into these components because we're tech geeks and we like to look at the details and get in there and adjust every little thing so that when we get these things in your hands, you really like what you get. Before we dive into the actual installation flow, I just want to mention a couple things. When you ditch your OEM fender, you are getting rid of your license plate light and also your signaling system. In this video, we will not be covering the installation steps for the license plate light or signaling systems because we will have a separate video going over all of those components and how to install them in combination with our parts. I just wanted to let you know we do offer a license plate light that goes along with all of our kits, and we have several different signaling options for you. Whether you're using the high mount, low mount, we do have you covered. On this particular bike, currently on it, there is an integrated taillight. The taillight already has signals integrated into the capsule. So when you signal right or left, the signals are actually coming out of the taillight itself. Another option is our remount bracket that will take your OEM signals and permit you to mount them with this setup. And then this is our BL6 signal. It's one of the samples from our array of signaling equipment that we sell here at tstindustries.com. All of those will be covered in the subsequent video that will go over the lighting equipment. In this particular video, we will be focusing only on the low mount version of the Fender Eliminator kit. So let's push these aside and start the disassembly of the bike, and then we'll come back to the table, talk about these parts, get them mounted on the bike, and we'll be good to go. In the first step, we will be removing the license plate off the bike. You can choose to keep the OEM license plate holding method and reuse it with our system. We also sell really nice anodized aluminum hardware sets that match some of the components on this bike. So for this installation, we will choose to use the blue ones from our stock. The following step will involve seat removal. So first we'll grab our key, unlatch passenger seat. Then we'll grab a 5mm Allen and remove the driver's seat. Here are the two 5mm Allen screws that need to be loosened to remove the seat. Up here on the bike, we have 4 fasteners requiring a 12mm socket. 2 are right here. and we'll need to gain access to under these rubber boots. When these come out, they do have a spacer. Make sure you retain that spacer. They are very loose. If you drop it, pause, make sure you retrieve that. You will need it for reassembly. For the next step, we are going to switch to a 10mm socket. And now we are going to pull out these 4 fasteners here. These do not have spacers. We're going to perform one more tool change. We are going to go to a 4mm Allen, and we are going to pull out this fastener here, this one right here, and one right here. That completes the mechanical fasteners from the top for the right side of the side tail. We're gonna do the same thing on this side. We're gonna mimic those steps on the left side, and then we're gonna hop below and grab some fasteners from there. So these 2 locations come out with just a screw, no spacer. On the back here, we do have spacer. Please memorize where these screws go or refer back to the video for reassembly. They do have different thread specs and different diameters, and they do need to be put back in the correct location. All right, the top unfastening is complete. Let's hop below. In this next step, we will be removing 4 rivet push type fasteners, one here, here, and on the opposite side in same locations. Just push the center in, and then they just pop out. When you remove the 2 rearmost ones, this fender shroud will now be loose. Let it droop in the forward section, and then pull it towards the front, and that releases it. Once these push rivets are out, now the side panels are fully unfastened. We are going to grab them right about here, pry it away from the tail light downwards until we snap out that little window that interferes and connects to the center. And now there is a series of rubber grommet and peg fasteners that are holding the entire side to the frame. So we will grab this entire section of the fairing and pull straight out 90 degrees to the center plane of the bike. And that just clears them out. There's one more here up front somewhere. And here we go. This one interfaces with this peg. And then we have this peg that interfaces with this grommet. We will repeat the step on the left side of the bike. And for good measure, we are going to take that center bracket that holds these side pieces right here and take that down so it doesn't rattle around on us. We will need to identify 3 different cables here. One of these is this gray plug set. This is our license plate light. Up here we have a black plug set, and that is one of the signals. And here we have the white plug set, which is the other signal. Pressing down on this tab here will unlock this connector, permit you to withdraw it. We'll do that with these 2. We will unroute them from their cable routing guide here on the sub tray. This is just a C channel that gets the wires passed through. And then we have this last one here. You lift up on this tab, and that clears it for you. There's one additional routing guide here. This cable management part is sort of like a clamshell ratchet, and it's got 2 ratchets coming towards each other. So we'll need to pry away at the teeth here. Actually, I should be able to push it out from the bottom so I could show you guys. So this is what it looks like. You want to clear it like this. If you jam your little screwdriver in here, and pry around, it'll come off. Just gonna replace it in here in its original location. So we're ready to go back in, and that'll be that. All right, with the wiring unhooked, we'll grab an 8mm socket and then remove these two fasteners and their matching pair on the other side of the bike. Once I get to this last one, I will hold my fender suspended so it doesn't just drop. And we still have one rivet fastener here in the center. That also needs to be unhooked by pressing the center. And now the fender comes down, and this panel here no longer has its aft section to hook into, so it will droop and likely come off. We just rest it here for now. We'll deal with it later. Okay, at this point, we're gonna jump back to the table for a brief moment to go over the details of how the subcomponents of your kit will aid us in the proper assembly onto the bike. Here on this side, we have the kit that comprises the Undertail Closeout. You have the closeout itself, which is made of ABS plastic. We have our canoe clips, which just close out these holes. Since we are going with the low mount version of the Fender Eliminator, these holes are unnecessary for this installation and will just need to be closed out. Now, for each one of these holes in the closeout, where this closeout engages with the subframe of the motorcycle where the fender came out of, we will have a washer and screw pair. Each one of these holes will be taken up by this pair, and then this will subsequently screw into the motorcycle, and then everything will build around it. If you have to use a thread locking agent, please do not use a standard anaerobic agent. It will degrade chemically the composition of this part, and chemical decomposition is not covered under your warranty. If you need a tip on what kind of thread locking agent to use, typically on plastics, I use Vibratite VC3. For this installation, I will not be using a thread locking agent. I just torque these things down enough to preload the plastic against the threads, and that keeps them on. I've never had a problem. Moving on to the low mount license plate bracket. This is fairly simple. It's a stainless steel bracket, like I mentioned in the intro. It will mount to the undertail of the bike in this configuration. We do have a slot here that enables templating onto the bike. I'll show how to use that in just a moment. The two remaining canoe clips here are actually not for this area. They are meant to go in place of two of these larger push pin fasteners that came out of a location in the disassembly flow. So we will touch on that a little bit later. Here we have small washer, screw, building from the outside of the bracket, through the undertail components, large washer from the top, and then we'll cap that off with the nylock locking nuts. No need for thread locking agents here, as the nut itself is equipped with a locking method. It's pretty much simple as that. Let's head on over to the bike, grab these components. We're gonna start with the assembly of the closeout first, and then we'll jump to that. We are now going to bring the closeout setup to the bike. We do have this tab here with a hole that will receive one of the smaller rivet type push fasteners, the one that we removed from here. Basically stacks the way the OEM setup stacks. We align, push through, pop the center in, and now it's a fully built part. Here on the undertail, we have a tab that slots into its receiving window, and then on the sides, we have these tabs that will need to grasp around the sub tray. Once we bring this up to the undertail here, our holes for the closeout should come into alignment with the mounting pad for the fender, and we're going to use the screw pairs I described on the table to get this mounted up. 4mm Allen will be the tool of choice. Thread one up close to bottom, but keep some adjustability in there. Now I have a self-captive system here that will make it easier to get all the other screws in. Everything's looking good here, so I'm going to tighten down all the way. And now that will be that on the closeout installation. And now we'll move down here and talk about our license plate bracket. Like I mentioned on the table, this slot here is meant for templating. So we will need to grab the bracket in this way, hump up, lay it up flat against the undertail here with this tab protruding through the bracket. And this now gives us the hole location that we'll need to make in the undertail and the sub tray. So there will be drilling necessary. We'll need to put 2 1/4-inch holes or 6mm holes through these plastic components. I will show you how to template that and drill it through. For now, let's hop up top and get some of the components up here that are sensitive out of the way, and then we'll move forward. The holes that we will need to create will be coming through the undertail just under all of these components, so we will need to get them out of the way so that all of our wires are safe. I'm going to pull up on our fuse box. This is done by pressing on this tab and taking it out of its keeper. I'm also going to take out a starting relay connector, and then I'm going to get all of these wires out of the way. I think this one's fine here. If you like, you can also take out the secondary fuse box. This way, all of your parts are out of the way. Our holes will be coming through roughly here and here. After we mark them and get a marker through from the bottom side to the top side, then we'll grab a drill and drill from the top side down. Now all of our cables will be safe, so we're good to go to the next step. Back on the bottom now, let's template our holes. Talk about how we're actually going to create those holes. I have my full-size drill here. It will not go on the appropriate axis, and unless you have an angle drill, you will also face the same problem. Now, angle drill is not a common household tool, so we will basically say we need to figure out a different, better way. One of those ways is to mark our hole with a paint marker and then go from there. We can also use a drill bit as a mark maker. If you have a snapping punch, that will also work. It will put a dent into the undertail where you need to place that hole. Whatever you do, you need to mark it from the bottom all the way to the top, and then drill from the top with the appropriate size drill. So, my favorite method of placing the mark in the undertail is using a pin. I have a pin here that is from an office supply store. It looks like this. I don't know what it's used for in the office world, but I use these things around the shop quite a bit, and I think they're like $500 for $2 or something like that. I'll heat this guy up, and this will enable me to plunge through that polypropylene plastic all the way to the top, giving me my hole center from the top. All right, nice and easy here. I do like the approach of having that red mark there first and then placing the hole. So I will do this on the other side. I will repeat my pin trick. All right, we're good to go here. We're going to jump up top and start drilling. Our goal up here is to make 2 1/4-inch holes or 6mm holes through those components. I did equip my drill with an 1/8 inch drill bit for the purpose of step drilling. This will not walk around as much as a larger bit, so we'll make sure that we stay true to our hole center. We're gonna drill this first and then change bits and go to full 1/4 inch. So up here, wires out of the way, we have our marked spots where we are going to drill. I am going to go very slow in the beginning, making sure that we don't walk off our center. Nice and easy. Switch over to 1/4 inch. Let it bite in the center before you press the trigger. And that's pretty much it. All right, let's grab the bracket, one of the screws and one of the small washers that go from the outside, place it through like so, and mate up that bracket right through, making sure that the tab from the undertail protrudes through the slot. And while holding the bracket and screw from the bottom, I'm gonna drop the larger washer on top of the screw. And then I'm gonna get my nut threaded onto this screw, making sure that the locking element, the white locking nylon, faces the top and only the threads go to the bottom. Engage that as far as it'll go and then move on to the left side. Same procedure. Now I will grab a 10mm socket, use that from the top, 4mm Allen from the bottom, and we will take this to full tightness. There's no need to squish the plastic sandwich in between these fasteners. As soon as you come to bottom and notice no more wiggle, give it a 1/4 turn more, and that'll be that. Like I mentioned on the table, we do have a locking element in the nuts, so they will not spin off on you. All right. If you are installing a license plate light with your Fender Eliminator setup, this is the best time to get it routed and set up. This window and this bracket is meant for routing our license plate light here from TST Industries. If you are using a different system, then you will need to modify this step to that particular system. Our components were designed to be used together, so it's the safest bet. Now we have our license plate light flush against this bracket, and we'll just need to figure out what to do about the routing of the wire. Typically, what I do on this particular bike is I go up to the side here of this bracket and go up in between this sub tray part and the tube. This clamps it for me and keeps it nicely taut under all the fairing components and frame components. I do need to press on the sub tray downwards a little bit to pass that wire through, otherwise there's too much pressure on the wire. And I do like to leave a little bit of slack. And what you see here is a little bit more sloppy than I would like to leave in case nothing was covering it, but I do like having the extra slack here, so I will opt to leave it like this. And then if you can imagine a license plate being here, that will cover all this up, and the only remaining visible part of the wire will be right here, which is not a big deal. Now this wire goes up to the top of the entire bike under both of these tubes, and then we put it into the sub tray battery compartment here and wire it up as per the instructions included in our lighting video. Let's now get some of these components that we previously removed back into their locations. I'm gonna put the secondary fuse box back, plug in our starter relay. I think I reversed that. Primary fuse box goes in, click, click, everything's looking good. All the wiring is back the way it was previously. Let's go into reassembly mode. And put the mid bracket back on. I typically like to get all of my fasteners set in, start the threads, and then at the very end, make any adjustments and tighten everything down. So now the bodywork will need to make its way back onto the bike. Grommet, peg, peg, grommet. Critical part here is this window against the tab on the tail light. If you misalign it and press it, you will break the tab on the tail light. So you need to exercise some caution. If this got dislodged, make sure that the holes are concentric. There's also geometry in here that fits right on top of the tail light and locates it. It's fairly easy. I'm going to start in the forward section, engage that friction fastener, then get this under here. Make sure that the fairing, side fairing goes around the bottom of that undertail. And now I'm going to align my tail light tab. Once I have that aligned, push straight in, and it's nice and easy. Repeat on the left side. All right, everything's looking good. Start with the fastener that came out of here. This fastener does have a shoulder. Make sure that you get the shoulder into the plastic. The shoulder needs to interface with the steel component here and not squish the plastic. Same here, this also has a shoulder. Screws that go back here have these shoulder washers. Make sure they are there before you start fastening this into the bike. Those shoulders are meant to fit through the plastic. And now we have 4 screws that go in here. They also have a spacer that needs to be on there. Make sure that is there. Now let's go ahead and tighten all these fasteners down. The last step here will involve mounting our license plate to this setup and then replacing these push pins here. Let's start with the license plate. If you have a license plate light, the license plate will go right into that groove that's in the license plate light. If not, you don't have to worry about it. On the license plate light, we do have a double stick component here. You can choose to peel it off and adhere it to the underside of your license plate. I typically don't do that. There's enough clamping force here that this thing doesn't move. So I'll go along with that. During the checkout process, you had to choose what type of hardware to send for us to send with your kit. If you chose blue, it'll look like this. If you chose another color, it'll look slightly different, but the procedure will be the same. You have the countersunk anodized washer from the outside with the screw, a large silver washer from the underside, and then one of these flange nuts. Make sure the flange goes towards the bracket and washer from the underside. This can be a bit cumbersome, so I like to use pliers on the back side, holding the locking nut with the flange towards this whole setup. Then I will use a 3mm Allen here. Now that we have our screws self-captive, make sure everything is hanging to my liking and balanced side to side. You could bring this up just a little bit. You could bring it down just a little bit. There is a little bit of adjustment. Also, the slots on the bracket enable you to center your license plate. And now it's good to go. I'm gonna use an 8mm open-ended wrench from the backside. And now bring this to full tightness. Okay, now let's replace the remaining fasteners here. On the forward locations, we have the smaller push type rivet fasteners that came out of there. So that's really simple, no big deal. On the rear locations here, we had this shroud that provided extra thickness for the engagement of these OEM larger push type fasteners. If you push that in at this point, even if you set it, they remain loose. So we will use our canoe clips that we equipped you with. Just go in and hold themselves flush, and that'll be that. All right, guys, that's pretty much it. What you see here took me about a half hour. We went from this giant shovel in the back to this sleek and sexy look for the entire tail of this bike. I really love it. If you agree and you like what you see here, check out TSTindustries.com. We have these parts ready to go for you. We also have other parts for this bike and other bikes you may have in your stable. I would really appreciate it if you hit like and subscribe and drop me some comments. I like to hear from you. I like to know if we're doing well, if we need to improve on something. It all helps, and I like talking to you. Thanks for watching. Ride safe. See you later.